The gavel cracked, and the sound echoed like a gunshot. A man's life hung in the balance. We trust our courts to be pillars of justice. But what happens when the judge himself is the criminal? What happens when the man in the black robe is a racist, so consumed by hate that he will plant evidence on a black man to secure a conviction? He is about to ruin the wrong man's life, because that man is not just a defendant. He is a federal agent, and he is recording everything. The air in Courtroom 3B of the Davidson County Courthouse was stale, thick with the smell of old wood polish and cheap coffee. It was Judge Harlan Whitaker's domain, and he ruled it like a bitter king. Whitaker, a man whose face seemed permanently set in a sneer of mild disappointment, looked down from his elevated bench. His eyes, the color of washed-out denim, scanned the defendant standing before him. The defendant was Barrett, just Barrett on the docket. He was a black man, dressed in an orange jumpsuit that did nothing to hide the powerful build of his shoulders. His face was calm, almost unnervingly so. Docket number 719B, the People versus Barrett Voss, the clerk droned. Charges are resisting arrest and assault on a peace officer. Not guilty on all charges, Your Honor, Barrett said. His voice was deep and steady, devoid of the fear Whitaker was used to hearing. Whitaker leaned forward, his spectacles slipping down his nose. Assault on a peace officer, Mr. Voss. A serious charge. Officer Klein claims you broke his hand. Officer Klein, Barrett stated, slipped on a wet sidewalk while trying to tackle me for fitting a description. I put my hands up, and he fell. I never touched him. A likely story, Whitaker scoffed, ignoring the young public defender Lydia Soto, who was frantically trying to interject. Lydia, barely out of law school and drowning in an impossible caseload, finally spoke. Your Honor, Mr. Voss has no prior offenses. The assault charge is clearly an overreach. The officer's own partner's report only mentions resisting. We believe Officer Klein embellished his report after the fact. We ask for release on recognizance. Whitaker gave her a pitiless look. Do you know the conviction rate in my courtroom, Miss Soto? It is high. I do not tolerate attacks on law enforcement. He looked back at Barrett. This fitting a description. Were you by chance in the vicinity of the Mill Creek robberies? I was walking home from the bus stop, Barrett said. That is what they all say, Whitaker murmured, loud enough for the court reporter to catch. He shuffled his papers. He saw a black man. No job listed on the intake form. No permanent address. Transient. Dangerous. In Whitaker's mind, the case was already closed. I am not letting a potential cop-breaker back on my streets. Bail is set at a high amount. Lydia gasped. Your Honor, for a resisting charge, he cannot possibly. He cannot. Then he should not assault police officers, Whitaker snapped. Next case. I need to file for a mistrial based on prosecutorial misconduct, she said, breathless. Rocco sighed. Ms. Voss, Judge Langston does not grant those lightly. You need more than Whitaker's grandstanding. I have more, Lydia said, lowering her voice. I overheard him in the hall. He was talking to Sergeant Klein. He said, and I quote, I do not care if he is guilty. I care that the jury thinks he is guilty. He is not trying a case. He is building one. He knows the evidence is tampered with. Rocco's professional boredom vanished. His eyes widened. He said that out loud. Yes, and I need to tell the judge this is not just a dirty lawyer. This is a crime. The judge is at lunch, Rocco said. But this is serious. Langston hates this stuff. She hates him. Everyone knows Whitaker is dirty, but no one has ever caught him. Rocco looked at the case file on his desk. State versus Harlan. Kael Harlan. Harlan. Why does that name? He typed something into his computer. He was just doing routine due diligence, cross-referencing the defendant's file. He typed Kael Harlan. Then he typed Harlan, Thaddeus. He stopped. He clicked a link. A profile popped up. He clicked another. His face went completely white. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Rocco, what is it?" Lydia asked. Rocco looked up at her, his hands shaking. "Ms. Voss, your misconduct motion is about to become the least of Harlan Whitaker's problems. Does Kael know who his father is?" "What?" "Of course. He is estranged from him. Some construction guy. I do not know. He does not talk about him." "Why?" Rocco turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was the official state website, and on it a picture of a tall, imposing, smiling black man. The caption read, "Thaddeus Harlan, Arizona State Attorney General." Lydia Voss's knees went weak. His father is the chief law enforcement officer of the entire state. Rocco finished, and Harlan Whitaker just framed his son. "Does the judge know?" Lydia whispered. "She is about to." Rocco grabbed the file and a printout. "This is not a mistrial anymore. This is a 5-alarm fire." Judge Elowyn Langston was picking at a salad in her chambers when her clerk Rocco burst in without knocking. A severe breach of protocol. "Your Honor, you need to see this immediately." Langston put down her fork, her annoyance plain. "Rocco, I am on recess. Whatever it is, it can—" "No, Your Honor, it cannot." He slapped the printout of the Attorney General's webpage on her desk next to Kael Harlan's intake file. State versus Harlan. Kael Harlan. Look at the father's name on the intake. Thaddeus Harlan. I ran it. That is Thaddeus Harlan. Judge Langston stared at the photo of the Attorney General. Then she looked at the intake form, then back at the photo. Her blood ran cold. Is this confirmed?" she asked, her voice low. "He is estranged, apparently," Rocco said, "which is likely why no one has made the connection. The kid has no prior adult record. He came in through the public defender system. Whitaker probably saw Kael Harlan, young, black, no private attorney, and just licked his chops. He never bothered to look." Langston leaned back, the implications washing over her. The chief law enforcement officer of the state, his son in her courtroom, being railroaded by a prosecutor from her own county. "The body camera glitch," she whispered. "The shoplifting slip," Rocco added. "The coerced witness," Lydia Voss said, stepping into the chambers just behind Rocco. "Your Honor, I need to be heard." Langston looked at Voss, then at Rocco. "Ms. Voss, this is highly irregular." "I know, Your Honor, but I overheard Mr. Whitaker in the hall. He was talking to Sergeant Klein. He said, and I quote, 'I do not care if he is guilty. I care that the jury thinks he is guilty. He is suppressing exculpatory evidence and tampering with witnesses.' I was coming to file for a mistrial when Rocco found this." Langston stood up. The salad was forgotten. She was furious. Her anger was a cold, precise thing. She was not angry that the boy was the AG's son. She was angry that a prosecutor operating under her authority was so arrogant, so racist, and so stupid that he would pull these stunts. The fact that his victim was Thaddeus Harlan's son just meant the explosion would be nuclear. "He is not just stupid," Langston said, thinking aloud. "He is banking on the kid being a nobody. He has done this before. How many other Kael Harlans has he sent up the river because they did not have a powerful father?" "The question, Your Honor," Lydia said, What do we do now? Langston looked at the clock. Court resumes soon. Mr. Whitaker is expecting to give his closing argument and get a conviction. She picked up the phone on her desk. Rocco, get the district attorney on the phone. Tell him I need him in my courtroom, or I am calling the state bar and the governor. Miss Voss, you are going to get your motion. She dialed a number. Who are you calling, Your Honor? The one person who can stop this circus dead, Langston said. She waited. Yes, this is Judge Elowen Langston. I need to speak to Attorney General Thaddeus Harlan. Tell him it is an emergency regarding his son. The courtroom was full again. The jury filed back in. Harlan Whitaker was at his table, sipping water, a confident smile playing on his lips. Kael thought, time to close the deal. Judge Langston entered, her face an unreadable mask. Court is back in session. Mr. Whitaker, you may begin your closing argument. Thank you, Your Honor. Whitaker stood, buttoning his jacket. He turned to the jury, his arms spread wide. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the facts are simple. The facts are undisputed. A man walked into a convenience store, threatened a young man's life, and stole from him. That young man, Rocco Quaid, bravely sat on that stand and pointed to the man who did it. That man, he pointed at Kael. We then heard from Sergeant Klein, a decorated officer who found the defendant blocks away, matching the description. And what did he find in his bag? The stolen goods, the cigars. The defense, Whitaker scoffed, is a fantasy. It is a conspiracy. It is the cops planted it. It is the witness lying. It is, I was just writing rap music. It is an insult to your intelligence. It is the desperate, pathetic lie of a young man who has no respect for the law, no respect for this court, and no respect for you. He is a common thief, Whitaker's voice rose, and he is counting on you to be fooled by his. The main doors of the courtroom suddenly slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Everyone turned. Harlan Whitaker paused, annoyed at the interruption. Your Honor. But his words died in his throat. Standing in the doorway were two men in dark suits, state police, and between them was a tall, powerfully built black man who radiated an authority that eclipsed everyone in the room, including the judge. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, and his face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. He did not look at the judge. He did not look at the jury. His eyes were locked on Kael. Kael's head snapped up. His jaw went slack. The blood drained from his face. He whispered one word. Dad. The Attorney General of Arizona, Thaddeus Harlan, began walking down the central aisle. The thud, thud, thud of his footsteps on the marble floor was the only sound in the dead silent room. Harlan Whitaker looked at the man. He looked at Kael. He looked back at the man. A dawning, sickening, cold sweat horror began to crawl up his spine. He did not understand. Harlan, Kael, Harlan, Thaddeus, Harlan. No. Oh no. 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 Thaddeus Harlan reached the defense table. He put one large, steady hand on his son's shoulder. Kael was trembling, looking up at his father as if he were a ghost. Dad, Kael whispered again, tears welling in his eyes. Thaddeus softened for a moment, squeezing his son's shoulder. Then he turned, his gaze falling for the first time on Harlan Whitaker. It was not a gaze, it was an indictment. Whitaker felt his vision swim. The confident, smug prosecutor visibly shrank, his face turning the color of ash. Judge Langston finally spoke, her voice ringing with judicial steel. Mr. Whitaker, it appears the defense has a new spectator. Please continue with your closing argument." Harlan Whitaker opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked from the stone-faced Attorney General to the furious judge. The jury was staring, utterly bewildered. I, Whitaker stammered. "Your Honor, I am not." "What is the meaning of this interruption?" "Interruption?" Thaddeus Harlan spoke, his voice a low baritone that commanded absolute attention. "I am not interrupting, Mr. Whitaker. I am intervening." "Your Honor!" Whitaker shrieked, his composure shattering. "This is wildly improper. This is witness intimidation or jury tampering." "Sit down, Mr. Whitaker." Judge Langston's voice was lethal. "You are embarrassing yourself. The jury will be excused now." The jury, looking panicked, was quickly ushered out. The moment the door closed, Judge Langston turned her full attention to Whitaker. Beside her, the district attorney, Whitaker's boss, Darius Klein, had slipped in from a side door, his face grim. He had gotten Langston's message. "Harlan," Klein barked. "What in God's name did you do?" Harlan: "I was trying a case." "A simple armed robbery," Whitaker protested, his voice cracking. "A simple armed robbery," Thaddeus Harlan repeated, his voice dangerously calm. He pulled a chair from the gallery and sat down at the defense table next to his son and Lydia Voss. He nodded to Lydia. "Miss Voss, well done." He then looked at Whitaker. "A simple armed robbery where your star witness, Rocco Quaid, was threatened." Whitaker's blood turned to ice. "That is a baseless allegation." "Is it?" Thaddeus Harlan slid a manila folder across the table to Judge Langston. "My office received a call from a very frightened Mr. Quaid. It seems that after he gave his testimony, his conscience got the better of him. Or perhaps he realized who he was lying about. My investigators are taking his sworn affidavit as we speak, an affidavit that states in no uncertain terms that you, Mr. Whitaker, approached him. You showed him a picture of my son, and you told him that if he did not identify him on the stand, you would personally resurrect a sealed juvenile drug charge against him. Quaid is lying. The kid is a liar. He is." "And then," the Attorney General continued, his voice rising, "there is Sergeant Darius Klein. My office has just pulled the full, unredacted maintenance log for his body camera. It did not have a low battery. It was manually deactivated from his belt unit, the precise moment the stolen cigars were discovered. I believe the term for that, Mr. Whitaker, is fabrication of evidence. This is a setup." Whitaker looked wildly at his boss. "Darius, you cannot let him do this. This is my case, my jurisdiction." "Your jurisdiction, Harlan. You just framed the Attorney General's son. You do not have a jurisdiction. You have a severance package. If you are lucky, you are fired." "Fired?" "Oh, you are far more than fired," Judge Langston said, her voice dripping with ice. "Mr. Whitaker, in my years on this bench, I have never seen such a grotesque and arrogant display of prosecutorial misconduct. You did not just slip up. You did not just make a mistake. You, sir, are a cancer." She picked up the folder. "Based on the evidence of witness tampering, fabrication of evidence, and damage to exculpatory material, I am declaring a mistrial. This case is dismissed with prejudice." She slammed her gavel. "Kael Harlan, you are free to go." Kael had not spoken. He just stared at his father. The handcuffs were unlocked. Lydia softened just for a moment. She reached out and squeezed the young man's shoulder. "It is over, Kael." "But it is not over," Thaddeus Harlan said, standing to his full height. He looked at the two state police officers he had brought with him. "Mr. Whitaker, My investigators have also uncovered a private conversation you had with Sergeant Klein, overheard by Mrs. Voss, in which you stated, "I do not care if he is guilty. I care that the jury thinks he is guilty. That is not a prosecutor. That is a criminal." The Attorney General pointed a finger at the trembling prosecutor. "Harlan Whitaker, you are under arrest for witness tampering, subornation of perjury, and obstruction of justice." Whitaker looked at the officers, at his boss, at the judge. The entire system that he had expertly manipulated for years had just turned on him in an instant with crushing force. You cannot," he whimpered as the officers moved in. "I am the chief law enforcement officer of this state, Mr. Whitaker," Thaddeus Harlan said, his voice pure steel. "I can, and I am." As the officers pulled Whitaker's hands behind his back, securing him with the same cold steel he had used on so many innocent people, Whitaker looked at Kael. His face was a mask of pathetic, begging disbelief. Kael just stared back, his expression hard. "He is all yours, officers," Thaddeus Harlan announced. As Harlan Whitaker was dragged, weeping and protesting, out of the courtroom he once commanded, the sound of his own ruin echoed off the walls. The karma for Harlan Whitaker was not a single event. It was a cascade. It was the complete and total dismantling of his life, a life built on the ruins of others. The first domino was his arrest. The story exploded across the news. Prosecutor arrested in courtroom for framing AG's son. The irony was too rich. The fall from grace too spectacular. His boss, D.A. Darius Klein, trying to save his own office, immediately released a statement condemning Whitaker, calling him a rogue agent and a disgrace to the profession. But Thaddeus Harlan was not satisfied with just firing him. His arrest was just the beginning. The charge of witness tampering against Rocco Quaid was ironclad. The obstruction of justice charge, backed by the body cam logs and Klein's eventual terrified confession, was a slam dunk. Sergeant Darius Klein and his partner, Officer Preston Hale, were immediately suspended. Facing their own charges, they turned on Whitaker in a heartbeat. They described a long-standing, unspoken agreement. Whitaker expected them to shore up weak cases against the usual suspects. A planted wallet here, a misremembered detail in a report there. Whitaker, in return, would make sure their questionable arrests stuck and would look the other way on their procedural shortcuts. The Attorney General's office did not just investigate Kael's case. They opened a full-scale review of every single case Harlan Whitaker had ever prosecuted. The floodgates opened. Dozens of defense attorneys, including Lydia Voss, formed a coalition. They started pulling files, re-interviewing witnesses, and discovering a pattern that was horrifying in its clarity. It turned out that in cases prosecuted by Whitaker involving a Black or Latino defendant, key evidence had mysteriously appeared, or exculpatory evidence had been lost. Witnesses recanted, claiming Whitaker or his pet detectives had threatened them. A man serving years for a burglary Whitaker prosecuted was exonerated when his public defender, armed with the new investigation, proved Whitaker had suppressed video footage showing the man was away at the time of the crime. A woman who lost custody of her children because of a drug possession charge Whitaker won was cleared. The drugs were found in a search that was now proven to be illegal, a fact Whitaker had intentionally hidden from the court. Harlan Whitaker, disbarred and disgraced, his face plastered on TV as the new poster child for corruption, was buried. His law firm partners, the prestigious Doyle, Shaw, and Whitaker, where his father was a senior partner, unceremoniously scrubbed his name from their letterhead. His wife, a prominent socialite, filed for divorce. His own father, the powerful corporate lawyer, refused to represent him. "You are not my son," he reportedly told him in the holding cell. "You are a liability." The system that Harlan Whitaker had weaponized was now pointing directly at his own head, and the man pulling the trigger was the most powerful lawyer in the state, a man whose son he had tried to destroy. The final crushing blow came later. Harlan Whitaker, having bankrupted himself on legal fees, was offered a deal by the very office he used to work for, now under intense scrutiny from the AG. He stood in a different courtroom, not as a prosecutor, not even as a lawyer. He stood in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his slicked-back hair now a patchy, stress-induced mess. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of witness tampering and 1 count of obstruction of justice. The judge, a colleague who used to lunch with him, looked down at him with disgust. "Mr. Whitaker, you took an oath," the judge said. "You swore to seek justice, but you sought only victory. You preyed on the weak, the poor, the nobodies you assumed would never be heard. You were the wolf guarding the henhouse. The only difference between you and the criminals you prosecuted is that you wore an expensive suit, and you were 1,000 times more dangerous. It is the sentence of this court that you serve years in state prison." As the gavel fell, Harlan Whitaker collapsed, a pathetic, sobbing wreck. The hard karma was not just that he was caught, it was that he was unmasked. He was not a shark, he was a parasite, and now the host he had been feeding on had finally and violently rejected him. In the quiet, echoing aftermath of the gavel's final fall, 3 lives, irrevocably linked by the explosion in Courtroom 3B, began to chart their new courses. For Harlan Whitaker, the path led downward into an abyss of his own making. His new life began not with a gavel, but with the cold metallic slam of a cell door at the Arizona State Prison Complex. The man who had moved through the halls of justice with the arrogance of a king found himself stripped, deloused, and handed a starchy orange jumpsuit. His name, Harlan Whitaker, Esquire, was gone. He was now an inmate number. The system he had so skillfully weaponized now turned its indifferent, crushing weight upon him. He, who had defined men by their worst acts, was now defined by his. He had no power, no allies. His suits were replaced by rough cotton, his Italian leather shoes by plastic shower sandals. The most exquisite torture, the hard karma that struck deepest, was his prison assignment, the library. It was a cruel and fitting joke. He was surrounded by the very law texts he had once mastered, the spines of books on constitutional law and criminal procedure mocking him. He spent his days stamping due dates, the thud, thud, thud of the rubber stamp, a hollow echo of his gavel. His true terror, however, was not the loss of status. It was the loss of safety. He was surrounded by the very thugs and criminals he had sneered at and railroaded. He walked the yard with his head down, avoiding eye contact, terrified of being recognized. One day, shelving books, he came face to face with a man he recognized, a man he had sent up for burglary. Except the man was not there. He had been released, exonerated by the new investigation. The man Whitaker saw was just another inmate. But in his panicked, guilty mind, every face was a ghost of a life he had destroyed. For Lydia Voss, the path led upward, but not in the way she had ever expected. The quiet, exhausted public defender, who had been drowning under a mountain of caseloads, became an overnight, if reluctant, minor celebrity. She was the PD who took down Whitaker. Her inbox was flooded. Different high-powered corporate law firms in Phoenix offered her a partner track, promising a salary with more zeros than she had ever seen. They promised corner offices, expense accounts, and an end to the brutal, thankless grind of the public defender's office. She looked at the offers, at the life of comfort they represented. She thought of Kael. She thought of all the clients before Kael who did not have a powerful father, the ones she had lost to men like Whitaker. She turned all the offers down. A letter came. It was a single-page letter on heavy cream stock, embossed with the seal of the state of Arizona. It was from Thaddeus Harlan. He was not offering her a job. He was offering her a mission. He was forming a new conviction integrity unit, a division of the Attorney General's office with a simple, terrifying mandate. Find the other victims. Find the other Whitakers. He appointed Lydia to lead it. She sat in her small, cluttered apartment, holding the letter. This was it. This was the power she had always lacked. She would no longer be a firefighter, desperately trying to save one house at a time. She would now be the arson investigator, with the power to hunt the men who were setting the fires. She accepted. She finally had the resources, the authority, and the backing to fight the system itself. And then there was Kael. After the whirlwind of his release, after the bailiff unlocked his cuffs and the courtroom doors closed, he was left standing in the middle of the empty room. The reporters, the lawyers, the cops, the jury, all were gone. The silence was deafening, heavy with the ghosts of what almost happened. He was alone, except for the tall, imposing man who stood by the defense table, his father. It was the first time they had been in the same room, just the two of them, in a long time. The air was thick with unspoken things. Kael's hands were shaking. He rubbed his wrist, the skin still raw from the cuffs. He looked at the man who was both a stranger and his only family. "You came," Kael said finally. His voice was thick, raw. It was not just a statement. It was an accusation. "You came now." "I came," Thaddeus said. His own voice was heavy, not with the authority of the Attorney General, but with a deep, personal guilt that had nothing to do with the law. Thaddeus took a step forward, his eyes scanning his son, seeing the cut over his eye, the exhaustion, the way he flinched as he moved. "Why did you not call me, Kael?" Thaddeus asked. The question pained, almost a whisper. "When arrested." "Why did you let it get this far?" "I would have." "Would have what?" Kael snapped, the anger he had been swallowing finally erupting. It was hot, bitter, and shaking with fear. "Would have what, Dad?" "Sent one of your suits. Called the DA and made it go away. Bailed me out and hidden me. I did not want your help. I did not want the system to save me." His voice cracked, and he pointed a trembling finger toward the empty judge's bench. "That is the system that killed Mom." Thaddeus flinched as if he had been struck. His wife's death. It had been from cancer, not a crime. But Kael's words hit their mark. While she was sick, Thaddeus had been burying himself in his work, running for office, chasing a vision of public justice. He had convinced himself he was doing it for his family, to build a better world. He had not realized that in the process, he had abandoned them. His son had drifted away, angry and alone, convinced his father had chosen a career over his family. I did not want to be the Attorney General's son," Kael continued, the words tumbling out, tears of rage and relief stinging his eyes. "I just wanted to be just Kael. I wanted to see if I could make it on my own. And this," he gestured to the courtroom, to himself, "this is what happens to just Kael. They tried to bury me, Dad. They looked at me, and they did not see a person. They saw a statistic they could process. If I was not your son, if you had not walked through those doors," he choked on the thought, "I would be on a bus to prison right now. That guy, Whitaker, He was not wrong about one thing. The system is out to get us. Thaddeus Harlan, the most powerful man in the state, the very symbol of that system, looked at his son. He did not see a case or a victim. He saw a terrified boy he had almost lost forever. A boy who was right. "You are right," Thaddeus said. The words shocked Kael into silence. His father had never admitted fault. Not like this. "The system is broken," Thaddeus continued, his voice quiet, raw. "It is built by men, and some of them are men like Whitaker, vain, ambitious, cruel men who see justice as a game. I have spent my whole life trying to fix it from the inside, following the rules, believing the rules would win." He looked at the empty jury box, then back at his son. "But today, when I got that call from Judge Langston, I did not come here as the AG. I did not care about the rules. I came here as your father, and I would have burned the whole building down to get to you." He closed the distance between them. For a second, Kael was rigid, a long time of anger and distance still forming a wall between them. Thaddeus did not care. He pulled his son into an embrace, a strong, desperate hug that was part apology, part rescue. For the first time in his young life, Kael felt the full, unconditional, protective power of his father. The dam of adrenaline and fear and rage finally broke. He buried his face in his dad's shoulder, a strong, desperate hug that was part apology, part rescue. His hands gripping the back of the expensive suit jacket, and he finally let himself cry. He sobbed, not just for the terror of the trial, but for the years of loneliness. "I am sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I am sorry too, son." Thaddeus whispered back, holding him tight, his own eyes closed. "I am sorry I was not here. But I am now. I am now." The legal case, State versus Harlan, was over. But the personal one, father and son, had just begun. The trust between Kael and the world was shattered. The trust between him and his father was barely a thread. It was a long road, but as they walked out of the empty courtroom, leaving the ruins of Harlan Whitaker's career behind, they were, for the first time in a long time, walking it together. The fall of Harlan Whitaker was not just karma, it was a reckoning. But it leaves us with a terrifying question. How many Kael Harlans are out there right now who are not lucky enough to be the Attorney General's son? How many other lives are ruined by men like Whitaker every single day just because they are seen as a nobody? This story is a reminder that the system is not just broken. It is often working exactly as the corrupt designed it to. Justice is only blind when good people force it to open its eyes. If this story shocked you, if you believe that karma is real and that no one should be above the law, then please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see that even the most powerful bullies can fall. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We have so many more stories of justice, revenge, and karma being served cold, and you do not want to miss a single one. What did you think of Whitaker's takedown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.